Okay, Jangchup, Sangi Chedan, Soki Chanola, Janchu Baju Jagni, Chapsuchi, Dagi Chanyan, Gipe Sonam Ki, Dola, Pensia, Sangi, Drupa, Shog. So put our motivation clearly to listen to these teachings, think about the meaning so we can apply the tools as they become available to us, so we can develop our potential, so we can become a Buddha to benefit sentient beings. That's the long-term plan. So I wonder if there's any questions while you're having your break. Any questions in there, Mary?
Oh, I don't see any questions, Venerable.
All right. Okay.
Oh, there is a question.
Yes, Alona. Okay, good. Alona, yeah. Go, darling.
Thank you, Venerable, for your teachings. I wonder if you can talk about empowerment. What is empowerment, and why is it important to receive empowerment? I would like to hear about it.
Okay. Well, Buddha's telling us that we're making various mistakes in our mind about how things exist. This is the one way of describing everything that Buddha's telling us. One way of framing all of Buddhism is in terms of how we have these mistaken views in our mind that are very ancient, very primordial, so strongly that we don't even know that we have these mistakes in our mind. And what these mistakes cause is the world out there, as Lama Yeshe puts it, to appear back to us wrongly. It's quite literally that. So Buddha's basically saying we're not, because of these misconceptions in the mind, we're not in touch with reality. This is very simply what he's saying. So the final way that things exist, the subtlest way, as we were telling, as you know, from David's question, we were discussing emptiness. We're discussing how things have no intrinsic nature. Well, that's the subtlest, most primordial mistake we make. And all the other mistakes are as a result of that. So then, as we know from discussion endlessly, some of the emotional mistakes are attachment that exaggerates the beauty of something and then clings to it and thinks it'll make me happy. Then the exaggeration of anger, which blames something for making me unhappy. All these misconceptions in our mind, these emotional states we have, their key function, as I've been saying, is they are misconceptions. They misrepresent the world to us because we're not in touch with reality. And then we believe these lies, we therefore suffer. It's essentially what Buddha's saying. So one of these lies is a grasping at things as permanent. This is really obvious. We suffer because of this. It's really clear. So when you have something, you know, like I always use that example of, you know, one Hollywood actress. It was Nicole Kidman when she was married to Tom Cruise. I remember reading an interview with her. I love the woman. And she said at the end of the interview, "We will be together until we are 80. Now think about that. If you have a good relationship and, you say you have a good relationship with your husband, you assume he will be there tomorrow. You assume the relationship will be continuing as it is, whether it's good or bad. So whatever the status is, we assume it's like that permanently. We assume it's just how it is. This is similar to what we were talking before, but it's a grosser mistake. It's a grosser mistake. But by understanding how everything is impermanent, understanding how everything actually is changing moment by moment, this leads us to realize the subtlest one, which is that nothing has an intrinsic nature. So grasping at things as permanent, and certainly grasping at this me as permanent. Now, we think that's silly because we say, well, I know I'm not permanent. I look in the mirror and I can see I'm getting more wrinkles and getting old. So we know we're not permanent. Permanent, not so much meaning living forever, but permanent meaning not changing. So look at how we suffer in daily life. Things are changing all the time, but because we liked it a certain way, we don't want it to change. So Nicole Kidman, when she said, "We will be together until we're 80, there's not a fraction of logic to prove that that can definitely be true. If we start to look at our experience in life, we know people die. We know people get divorced. We know people change their minds. But why do we think when you're in love and you've got a lovely relationship, why do we assume it'll be like this tomorrow? Not to mention assume we will be together until we're 80. It's really fascinating. We all do this and we don't notice because it's automatic. So the reason is because when something's going beautifully, like that relationship, and you're in love with each other and everything's perfect, because attachment is getting what it wants, and because really we can't stand the thought of not getting what attachment wants, we can't bear the thought of not having that person, of our life being horrible. So then we put this fantasy on top of it that it will last forever. Are we communicating, Alona?
Yes.
We recognize?
Oh, of course.
There you
Yes.
go. That's the answer. So the key point that Buddha's making, as I said before, is that we've got these various states of mind that we have practiced for countless lives that actually are mistaken. This grasping at things as permanent is literally a mistake. And that's why we suffer. Now, that's logical. I always use the example, let's say, of the exaggerating component. Like attachment exaggerates the deliciousness of something. Anger exaggerates the ugliness of something. So it's a bit like, which is another mistake. So it's a bit like, you got a 50 euro note. I forget what you're having. Where are you living? In Stockholm, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, you don't have euros. You have krona. You have crowns, don't you? So imagine you've got a 50 krona note, but for so long you really believed it's 500. Think of this. So you're exaggerating the value of that 50 krona. Well, you believe it's 500, and for so long have you exaggerated the status of the 50 that it actually appears to you as 500. So therefore you expect to get 500's worth from it. You go out with all these expectations, I'm going to get 500 crowns worth, and you always will get disappointed because it's not the truth. That's what Buddha's telling us. Attachment is a lie. Grasping at permanence is a lie. Grasping at things' intrinsic nature is a lie. These are all these lies. Our mind is riddled with these layers of misconceptions. Some are more easy to understand, some are more subtle. So the whole process of being a Buddhist, one way of describing the entire job of being a Buddhist, is getting rid of these delusions, these misconceptions that cause us so much pain now because they're lies. So when we get rid of those, we are then in touch with reality, and we are therefore content and happy and fulfilled and joyful and loving and compassionate. This is literally what we're trying to do as a Buddhist. Okay, Alona?
Yes.
Clear? Good,
Yes.
Tom. Thank you. What else, people? Any more questions? Michael?
Venerable, I have a question. In Lama Yeshe's book on the introduction to Tantra, he spends a fair amount of time talking about the death and dying process.
Yes.
And understanding that as a way to really enter into the tantric practice. Can you comment more on that?
Exactly. And were you there yesterday? You heard me read that chapter from Rinpoche's book about the death. Remember, I read that chapter, Death is what the yogis have been waiting for. You heard me talk about that, right, yesterday? Yes. That's exactly the point. So this whole way of describing the death process in terms of 8 stages of this gradual kind of deconstruction of this person, it is straight from the Vajrayana. And it's absolutely related to all the deity yoga practices that we do in our sadhanas. So roughly speaking, it's like this. The goal is, the whole point is we're living, the mind. At the moment, we live at a very gross level of our capacity for cognition. The Buddha's view is, and this is even what these amazing Indians more than 3,000 years ago discovered, is we have got subtler levels of mind. So that doesn't make much sense to us in the materialist world. We have no equivalent of that. So it sounds a bit puzzling. So we've got these, they found that as a result of this brilliant technique called shamatha that helps you get this single pointed concentration. Literally what you're doing in that technique, and this is one of the main techniques in Buddhism, Buddha took it with him when he went off in his own direction from the Hindus. It's this brilliant psychological skill that enables us to go beyond the grosser level of cognition. And that is what we only posit as existing in the modern world, the capacity of cognition, all the conceptual thoughts. We're going to know we've got millions of conceptual thoughts, and the sensory consciousness. the cognition of shape and color through the medium of our eye consciousness, the cognition of sound through the medium of our ear consciousness. So then Buddhism, in the discussion about the mind, this is in the sutra teachings even, gives great detailed descriptions of these. And this shamatha technique is also in the sutra teachings. So even in that one, by doing single point of concentration, you already completely subdue the grosser level of your cognition, which is your conceptuality. The thoughts completely cease, and you completely cease the sensory. Now that sounds like death as far as we're concerned in the modern world, but what these brilliant Indians found is that once you've subdued that, you access this subtler level of your capacity for cognition, which is your mind. So it's hard for us to imagine what that would be like because we've never experienced such a thing. So the point is that the tantric teachings have posited even subtler levels of cognition, and in order to get enlightened, we need to access that subtlest level, and they tend to call it the clear light mind or the extremely subtle mind. So in the tantric techniques enable us to get to even a subtler level of mind, and that subtler level is what we need to access in order to rid the mind of all the delusions very quickly so that you can then become enlightened. So death is what the yogis have been waiting for, as Rinpoche says, because very simply, because they've taken these empowerments into these deity yoga practices. So roughly speaking, like I said yesterday, the simplest way of describing these practices, which are the training in our becoming that Buddha. You visualize outside you the Tara, for example. You do various practices of offerings and prostrations and making requests to Tara. Then you do this technique of absorbing Tara into you, and you go through this elaborate process of this gradual dissolution, and you combine that process of Tara melting into you. You've combined that with the simulation of the 8 stages of death. So you go through this process of first absorbing Tara into you, and then you go through this process of gradually imagining the earth element ceases, the water element, all these different components. You get to the subtle level, then you get to the very subtle level, and then you imagine in the meditation going through all of these levels to the point where you get to the clear light mind. It's a gradual deconstruction, and they can meditate on that process, and the great yogis actually accomplish that in their meditation in the daily life, so they're totally familiar with this. So then when you get to the very subtle level in these meditations, utilizing deity yoga, which is a simulation of the death process, because the death process is the gradual deconstruction, first from the grosser level of consciousness, sensory, to the mental level, which is the conceptual, to the very subtle level, to the clear light mind, which is like the microscope of your mind. And these tantric techniques are powerful enough to enable you to access that very subtle mind. And at the time of death, it's the best time because it happens naturally and it's the most subtle level. So the great yogis have been waiting for that point. So you go through this deconstruction process, and then you get to the point where you then say, I am the clear light mind. And then you say, I am. So you imagine now you've become the Dharmakaya. I have become the Buddha's mind. And you meditate on that, and you meditate it on you meditate on it as being empty. At this point, you imagine you've become the Buddha. So in this case, Tara. And you meditate on emptiness of that Dharmakaya. Then out of that Dharmakaya, driven by your compassion, you then think, well, I must benefit sentient beings. So then you manifest as the Sambhogakaya form, which is the form that all the great bodhisattvas can manifest in to benefit sentient beings. And that's purifying. So the first one, the Dharmakaya, is purifying ordinary death. Then in ordinary death, after ordinary death, you go to the intermediate state. Well, this practice of then manifesting as the Sambhogakaya purifies the intermediate state. And then out of the intermediate state, you get born as another human being, for example. So then you imagine manifesting now as the Nirmanakaya to benefit sentient beings. So it's a way of utilizing the death process, which is from the Vajrayana, combining it with deity yoga, imagining you become Tara, imagining first you become the Dharmakaya, then you purify death, then you imagine purifying the intermediate state and you become the Sambhogakaya, and then you imagine purifying ordinary rebirth and you become the Nirmanakaya. That's the way of describing how the death process is totally integrated with the tantric process. And its methods, the greatest, as Lama Yeshe says, it's the perfect way to utilize death as a method for quickly becoming enlightened. So in other words, remaining conscious. The yogis have spent their lives getting concentration, going through this deconstruction process in their meditations. And then because the mind that arises, the clear light mind that arises at the time of death is the most potent, the most powerful, the most subtle, and it happens naturally because they've practiced it, then literally this is the time they've been waiting for. They've been practicing all their lives, and they're able to go through that death process and go through these 8 stages of deconstruction totally consciously at an ever more subtle, ever more subtle, ever more subtle level. And at each stage, they are meditating on emptiness. Then they get to the subtlest one, the clear light. They imagine it's the Dharmakaya. I am the Buddha and it's empty. Then they purify the intermediate state by imagining I become the Sambhogakaya. Then they imagine purifying rebirth by becoming the Nirmanakaya. They're the words for it. Does that make sense, Michael?
Yes, thank you so much.
Good, good, good. So read Lama Zopa's book because that chapter is really delicious. Yeah. Okay, who else? Questions? In other words, this is very technical. This is highly technical. It's not crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. You've got to be brilliant technically to do all this, which means you have to have masses of purification, masses of merit from lots of practice all our lives. But at least what we can do, as Rinpoche is recommending in this book, it's called How to Face Death Without Fear. It's all about how to help others at the time of death, but of course it's helped to help you death at the time of death too, is that you can practice this meditation every day. At least when we do die, we mightn't be a great yogini, but we can maybe remember as we're dying and not freak out and go and recognize these stages. That's a possibility for us. Yes, dearest people. Erin. Who is that? Erin, hello, darling. Happy to see you.
Yes.
Who's that with you? Looks like your sister. Who is it? Who is it? I can't hear. You've turned off. The mic's going off. Yeah. Who is it?
I'm Terry Venerable.
Hello.
Hello.
Have we met before? Have we met?
We have.
Good.
Yeah, I've taken an initiation with you. Thank
Refuge.
you. Refuge.
Refuge. Oh, good. I'm so happy to see you, darling. Okay, go on, Erin. Talk to me.
Great. So yesterday when you were speaking, I came up with a question. So thinking of the cake, in contact with the cake, having, for me, let's say a pleasurable sensation comes up.
That's right. Yeah.
But it's actually not the cake. It's a past positive karma that's ripening, triggered by the cake.
That's right. But you've got to have the cake, because we've got a body of the senses. We can't access that pleasure unless we get the cake. When you've finally given up delusions, your mind is naturally blissful all the time. But because we've got this body of the senses, then we can act by accessing the cake. Is the trigger that triggers the bliss, but the cause of that bliss is the past virtue. But the cooperative cause, the catalyst, is the cake. And having this sensory body is what using yoga in Tantra. You utilize the objects of the senses to trigger that virtue, which manifests as a blissful feeling. But because you're not grasping at it, it can be utilized on the path.
Okay. So then I guess the thought that comes up for me, because I'm just kind of starting to begin to get my mind around these things, is that I don't want to waste my past positive karma. I want to make sure that. So what are some things that I can do when I realize?
Okay, this is the whole practice. The very first level of practice is you just leave the cake on the plate. It's best. Too dangerous. We've got no control. That's the first level of practice. Hinayana level. Control the body and speech. Just leave it there as calm as you can. The next level, once you've got some control over your attachment, you're not completely berserk with it, you can then add bodhicitta and compassion and kindness and to the mix. That's the one that mitigates. That's the powerful first level of lessening the attachment. You can add, so in other words, before you shove the cake in, you can think of offering it to others. You can think it as empty. This puts atomic bombs under the attachment. So then you've still got attachment, but you put the virtuous thoughts in on top of it. That's the next most powerful way to do it. Offering the cake, seeing it as empty, doing it with love and compassion, eating with the wish to be of benefit to others. This is what mitigates it. This is what lessens the attachment. This is how you can work with attachment on the body, on the sutra bodhisattva path. Do you understand? This is the main, this is what Lama Zopa never stops telling us. Do you understand? That's why. Because instead of just mindlessly putting it in the mouth. Do you understand?
Yes,
That's
great.
powerful. And this is an easy way to transform every experience in our life. The sex we have, the pleasures we have, all the things that we have that are triggered by sensory contact with sensory objects on the Bodhisattva path, you can learn to offer them, see them as not intrinsic nature, see them as empty. I'm going to be kind to my husband and have sex with him, do it with a wish to be of benefit to others. I mean, we can transform everything. It mitigates the delusions, because nothing has an intrinsic nature. It's not set in stone as good or bad. Of course, there's still masses of attachment there, but by putting the virtue in first, you change the dynamic of the entire action. That's crucial. That's the practice on the Bodhisattva path. That's enormous. You understand, sweetheart?
Yes, that's
Absolutely.
great. Thank you.
Good. Yeah. What else, people? Yes, Lou.
Thank you, Venerable Robina. When you ask for your first empowerment, do you ask for a specific empowerment, or is that left up to the person you're asking?
What do you mean by ask for? You mean when you decide you'd like to take an empowerment?
Exactly.
Okay. You can take, I mean, you've got to be clear about, first of all, the Lama, who the teacher is. You've got to really check on their credentials, because if you're going to take an empowerment in the tantric path, you're making a very strong bond with that teacher, and you're going to become one of your gurus. That's very clear. That's really crucial. Then as for which initiation to take, some people have a very close relationship with their own teacher. They might take advice. The teacher might say, you decide. You can decide, you have to know. And then you have to check on what requirements the teacher is making. Like, for example, some highest yoga tantric practices, for example, like Vajrayogini, you must have taken another previous highest yoga tantra initiation first before you take Vajrayogini. So it's like that. You've got to know what the prerequisites are. You've got to know what the Lama is asking you to do. You've got to be clear about all of that. One can ask one's own teacher. One can do that. One doesn't need to do that, but then you can if you wish. And then, of course, you take that person's advice, or you decide yourself. So, but you've got to be very clear and very, very, very clear about it. Know exactly what we're doing. And now this is unfortunate. The downside of it being so easily available now is that we just treat it like really badly and kind of really, really cheaply, I mean, when you had to walk 3 months across Tibet to get to His Holiness to have one initiation, you'd take it seriously. When we can just click on our television screen now and then get bored and turn it off, this is the downside of how easy it is to get these things now, because the Holy Lamas are making them available on computers. Do you understand what I'm saying, Lou?
Yes,
I do. Yeah. So did it answer your question?
Yes, Venerable Robina. One other question would be, how do you find out what the requirements are? Is there a place to look?
Well, it should be. And the centers who are giving these empowerments should tell you. But unfortunately, even then, they often don't. They just, and many people don't think about it. But this is where it's important to learn in advance. That's why I put together this document. I mean, this is what I found. We just don't know half the time what the commitments and vows are. And so I remember years ago in Boston, when some people had taken color chakra initiation from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Now, His Holiness doesn't have Dharma centers. So my thought is, if the people can't turn to the Gelugpa centers for these Gelugpa initiations and requirements, then our centers, we must do this job, So it was really distressing, because people were asking questions, and then one woman at the back, they asked me if I would help them understand the practice once they'd taken the 6, the color chakra. So I was reading the different requirements, and then one woman at the back who'd been doing an empowerment, who'd been doing her practice for 30 years. She kept saying, oh, I didn't know I was committed to do that. Oh, I didn't know I was committed to do this. And I realized we just don't know half the time, because there are so many things actually. And so I then put together this PDF of all the requirements for refuge, bodhisattva vows, tantric vows, and it's just so we can be very read about it in advance is much better, in order to know what we're committing to. It's really important to do that. And often the centers don't do that, and people leap in and then don't know what they're even required to do. I mean, for example, just now, His Holiness gave Heruka Chakra Sambhava, which is the main Mother Tantra empowerment. He gave that from Dharamsala. And on the website, all it said was, you're committed to recite the 6-session Guru Yoga, and you're committed to do a particular Heruka practice. And that you would take, but it doesn't tell you where you can get the tantric vows. It doesn't tell you anything. So in a way, this is how it all is with the centers, and it's rather distressing, really, because it's a serious commitment. Because it's a serious commitment. We need to know what we're doing. So if people want to know, I can very easily, happily send this document to whoever's interested. And if this is something I was also thinking, and I mentioned this earlier. I'm doing this in Melbourne with some people at our little group there, the Zopa Noble Park Centre. I've done it before. This Holiness, for example, gave 1,000 Arm Chen Raising Empowerment in May last year, and it's online, and you can use that to take the empowerment. So I've done this already with some people that we all go on together, and then I explain what's happening, and then we do it together, and we're going to be doing that in Melbourne in September, early September, I think, maybe August, where we will all join in together on Zoom, and we will take the empowerment together, and I'll explain the Bodhisattva vows. We'll go through all these things. And I think we could also do that as well with this one. But I mean, for me, I've got to be careful. It's not my job. I'm not the teacher at TNL. I can't do this. I don't think Geshe-la wants to do this. Geshe-la is very conservative, and that's appropriate. He's the boss in Santa Fe. I can't do it there. I'm not the resident teacher. I'm just a visitor. But if a center would ask me to do that, I would do that. And I am going to do that for this center in Australia. So if people are interested in that, please make a note of that, and you can ask me about it. To take this empowerment with this holiness, we'll go through all this is not highest yoga tantra, so there's no tantric vows, but there are the bodhisattva vows. But also I thought at some point, if people wanted to do, we could do the Haruka Chakra Samvara empowerment together. And if that's going to be the first time a person takes the highest yoga tantra empowerment, then we can have just teachings about it first. I'm happy to do that, but people need to ask me. But I would only do it in relation to a center. I wouldn't do it independently. And I wouldn't do it at TNL because it's not requested of me. It's not appropriate for me to do this, So I'm just discussing things. So you want to discuss it with me, Lou, you can do that. You've got my email.
Okay, could you please send me a copy of the document?
No, not discuss it now. You email me, please.
Okay, sorry.
I'm not going to, you're going to email me. The ball's in your court, Lou.
Okay, thank you very much, Venerable.
What else, people? I just don't think it's a marvelous opportunity because most of us are not going to go to Dharamsala. So His Holiness is giving this opportunity to us by allowing us to take it online. It's unbelievably special. We need to know what we're doing. We need to know the practice. We need to be very committed and understand we're in for the long haul, not just treating it lightly. This is what's so important. Anybody else have any questions?
I do, Venerable.
Whose eye? Which
Cameron.
eye is it? Who is it?
Cameron.
Hello, Cameron. Let me find you. I want to find you, Cameron. And my 3 pictures on each page. There you go. I see you, darling. Talk to me.
Hi. It occurs to me that everything you've been saying, that there are a lot of us, maybe I'm speaking for myself, but a lot of people who jumped into it without fully understanding.
That's right.
And I know that I've been in it a long time, and I'm still catching up with my preliminaries and all of the foundationals. Is that okay if I just
of course it is.
Trucking?
I think it really is, Cameron. If you've got the key thing, I think until I would suggest that this is one from Lama Zopa as well. The key thing, if we're going to be taking empowerments, the key thing is to have real confidence in the teachings, in the Buddha, and in our gurus. If we've got real confidence and we're grounded at that level, then it's perfect to take empowerments, to take it really seriously. But that faith, that confidence in the Dharma, in the Buddha, and in the teachers is the crucial piece that makes it valuable. Does that make sense, Cameron?
Absolutely. Thank you.
And we do what we can with confidence to know the best of our ability, what the vows are, what the commitments are, and do our very, very best to keep them, because these are the most powerful tools we can have that we use to get enlightened with. So that's faith and confidence, which means humility, but confidence in the path, in the Buddha, and in the gurus. This is the crucial component, I would say.
Thank you, Venerable. I
Good.
just on the tail end of that, and I'm sure out of ignorance, definitely on my part, but probably on other people's parts too, they've committed downfalls against their teachers, not
That's
knowing.
right. Mm,
And
exactly.
I have, and now anyway, is there a way aside from full Vajrasattva and different purifications?
Yes, there is. There is a wonderful, There is absolutely, Cameron. This is really good. I'll tell you my own experience. Years ago, I was involved at the center in England in the 70s and 80s. It was FBMT initially, but the Geshe there, who was one of my lamas because I took initiation from him, he eventually took that center and he started his own tradition, in the new Kadampa tradition. You've heard about that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, he's one of my, it's really also a good example. I want to go into now the one about Guru devotion now. This is a really good topic. So there is this lama who, on the face of it, this is not criticism, this is fact. There was a big disharmony that happened back in the 70s, and then eventually he took the center and his students, and now he's developed this new tradition. And as we know, he doesn't approve of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So this would be quite traumatic because he was one of my teachers. And so this is the one about, this is two things discussing on several things I'm saying. First of all, the one about Guru devotion, and this is a hard one, but I'll go into this in a minute. But I wanted to keep that pure. So at some point in the mid-80s, Lama Zopa was invited there. Geshe wasn't there, but Lama Zopa was invited to do the practice called Samaya Vajra. Have you heard of that practice?
No.
This is the one I'm recommending, and I can send it to you. You have to email me. It's very short. It's incredibly sweet little practice. Samaya is this one of word of honor, and the Tibetan is Damtsig, so he's known as Damtsig Dorje. And we did this wonderful Samaya Vajra retreat. The students who were students of Geshe and the students who were the students of Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe, we did it together at that center, and I found that was so beneficial because it purified the karma we created. Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, at the time of this terrible schism that happened, he said, this is the result of breaking our third root tantric vow. And he's talking about past lives. And that third root tantric vow, as Lama Zopa expresses it, is speaking the faults of your Vajra brothers and sisters. And that specifically means a person who's taken an empowerment from the same Lama. It's like we're Vajra brothers and sisters. This very powerful karmic connection. So this was the cause of that from these past lives. It's one of the worst experiences of my life. I lived there. And so by doing this Samaya Vajra retreat, it is said to be the most powerful practice for particularly purifying broken vows, broken commitments, broken Samaya. And it's a very sweet little practice, and I can send it to you, Cameron, if you'd like it. So you please email me.
Thank you.
Have you got my email address?
Thank you. I will. Will this also be appropriate for being arrogant about your attitude toward the teacher and seeing?
Of course, darling, all of this, absolutely, especially the relationship with our Vajra brothers and sisters, with our Vajra gurus, absolutely. It's a very sweet little practice, not complicated, and Lama Zopa has written a very short version of it. And if you like, I can give you the mantra now, and you can repeat it after me. It's very short. Anybody who wants this mantra, it's okay. It's a highest yoga tantra practice, but it's a very delicious little mantra. I will say it to you, and you repeat after me. Om.
Om.
Om Mahavajra. Om Prajna. Om Prajna. Dika. Ha Hum. Om Prajna Dika. Ha Hum. Om Prajna Dika. Ha Hum. Om Prajna Dika. Ha Hum. Prajna. Om Prajna Dika. Om Prajna Dika. Om Prajna Dika. My gosh, I better get it right. Om Prajna Dika Ha Hum. Yeah, Om Prajna Dika Ha Hum. Yeah, I'll send to you, Cameron, if you get the email. But it's a very marvelous little practice, and you do it with the wish anyway to do the same 4 opponent powers. You regret, you have reliance, you have compassion, and then you vow not to do it again. But it's a specific one for broken Samaya, especially in Tantra. It's a very delicious little practice. Good, Cameron. Thank you, sweetheart. But have you got my email address so you can get it? Yeah. And you can ask.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
Don, you do that. Please do that. Yeah. This is really good points here. So I think we should here now talk about, especially in Tantra, the value of appropriate relationship with the teacher. All the way through Buddha's teachings, this is kind of really crucial. And it's sort of the logic of it. I think it's so important again to see the logic of it, because it's very obvious. And as Lama Yeshe said one time, the Buddha is dead. The Buddha's not here. So the Four Noble Truths will only become real for me when I hear them, this is my words, from the mouth of a person in front of me whom I have chosen to be the Buddha for me. That's a teacher. It's really obvious. I mean, it's not mystical. I know my mother was a classical musician. Now, you know, classical music in the West is treated very seriously. So the rigor, the discipline, the intensity of the effort to keep the music pure, to try to hear Bach's intent in that music is so powerful. So my mother, where did she get this Bach music from? Her teacher. And where did that teacher get that Bach music from? A living person in front of them before that. And you can track back these living people all the way in an unbroken chain right back to Bach. That's the value of a teacher. If you just leave the music in the piece of paper, you don't hear any music and you make up your own trip and it's all a load of rubbish. So it's obvious, this lineage, this line of living people going from one to the other. So, you know, that's why, for example, when we take refuge or take the vows, we take them in front of somebody. So when I give refuge, Lama Zopa's giving me permission, I got that from my teacher. They got that from their teacher. They got that from their teacher. And if it's a valid lineage, it's an unbroken chain of real human beings carrying that knowledge, receiving it from the previous one, right back to the Buddha. So this is the benefit of a teacher. It's sort of a no-brainer. It's not something mystical. I mean, you can't even make a cake without hearing it from the mouth of a valid cake maker. That's when it becomes real. And I always use that example for myself. When I was 25, I went home for years being in London. I was a hippie, and I asked my mother to show me how to make a cake. Now, I tell you, it was the first time that cakes became real for me. I could have read a book, but I got it from a valid cake maker, my mum. So she's my cake guru. And if you really think about this, I received an empowerment from my mother. Please demystify these words. My mother, whom I checked up on, I didn't know, but I checked up on my mother. That's why you should check on the teacher. Don't just ask any old idiot how to make a cake. How do you know they're speaking the truth? You don't have the experience. That's why you got to check up. So my mother, I checked on her. I checked on her disciples, my sisters. I checked on the product. I'd eaten her cake. I checked on her peers. Her friends said she was a good cake maker. You've got to do that. Otherwise, because I don't have direct experience of my mother's knowledge, so I have to have inferential certainty. I had done all that automatically. And then finally, at the age of 25 or something, I finally said to my mother, can you imagine how happy she must have been? Mum, show me how to make a cake. Then, and this is the point now, she had the knowledge, I was ready, and I asked her. My mother clearly knew she couldn't shove it down my throat since I was 25. She was no way in pushing me to make cakes. I would not have listened. I had to be ready. I had to want it. I had to be confident she was valid. And then I asked. It's exactly like that. And and this is what's so fascinating. I remember the day, the cake. I remember exactly the moment in that kitchen, because it stayed in my mind as an experience. My first time of cakes becoming real for me. It was an apple and walnut cake. I remember it. That's what an empowerment is. That's why you need a teacher. It's really so obvious. We shouldn't be confused by it, you know. And that's cake making, for God's sake. This is uncharted territory, becoming a Buddha, you know. So in the tantric practice, especially, this quality of seeing the Tara there, seeing whoever the Buddha is, Amitabha, Akshobhya, Hayagriva, whoever the deity is, you practice seeing the Buddha is the Guru and the Guru is the Buddha. In other words, as Babonka says, if the Guru isn't the Buddha, then who is? Where do you find Buddha but there? You can't access the Buddha. You can only rely on a human form. And you can't tell if a person's a Buddha because Buddha doesn't need a human form. So you've got to have this confidence, this clarity, checking carefully, checking on the Lama, checking on the qualities, and then you commit, you know. Then you commit. And then your practice is to see that Guru as the Buddha. And even as Lama Zopa says in a teaching I'm editing at the moment, he said, your Guru could be less realized than you. That's perfectly reasonable. Your Guru might even go to the lower realms, but you could get enlightened on the basis of having faith in that person and having pure view and seeing that person as the Buddha. And this is a very specific point. It doesn't make sense to us in our culture. We think if a person's naughty, you've got to point them out to be naughty. Because you see, even if you understand the Bodhisattva teachings, that even the most simple level of Bodhisattva teachings, if you can understand what a Bodhisattva is, radically lessen their delusions, only thinking of others, then this is why even in the vows, you are allowed to break a vow if it's truly for the sake of others. So therefore, who can you judge who anybody is? You know, that I meant that the yogi yesterday, I talked about running through the old lady's garden, you know, beating up the old lady's garden. I mean, you'd see a maniac if you saw that. You would never know he was a bodhisattva. You can't tell. because his mind is pure. He wanted to help connect with this woman. He had pure bodhicitta, but you don't know that. You can't see it. So we have to stop believing in karmic appearances. This is the essence of the practice of emptiness and guru devotion. And this is the quickest path for us to open our mind, to have devotion. When the mind is open, the mind has devotion. When the mind is open, the mind can quickly receive blessings, My mind was open to my mother in that kitchen on that day. Please hear the point. That's what devotion is. I left my ego out of it. I said, Mum, show me how to make a cake. And I did what she said because my mind was open to her. That's the meaning of devotion. It is logical. So as Bhavanga Rinpoche says, choose your gurus very carefully because you're going to end up like them. And that onus is on us to do that. It's a very powerful relationship to develop with somebody, I tell you. And it needs constant practice. So when we often tend to think, oh, well, there's Tara and there's my guru over there. That's schizophrenic. Tara is nothing other than your guru, and your guru is nothing other than Tara, you know. We have to learn to understand the logic of that. My mother, effectively, when she taught me music, she was Bach. That's the best way to put it. She embodied Bach. How else could I have got Bach's music but through the mind of my mother? That's guru devotion. It's logical. So choose the person very carefully. This is the essence of it, I swear to you. And there's real logic to it. This is the quickest method to get the realizations. The quickest method for me to learn to make that cake was to ask my mother, and then to be open to it and to listen to her instructions. And I got it, and it stayed in my mind. That's when I was 25. That's 52 years ago, you know. We're communicating, people. I hope so. Because see, the tendency of ego is to find fault. That's what it does. Ego wants to find fault. So when your mind is finding fault, you cut yourself off. If I sat there with my mum and she said, put 2 eggs in, darling. And I said, what do you mean 2? Why not 6? Who do you think you are? That's the end of me learning how to make a cake. But don't choose any idiot who says put 6 eggs in and you make a mess. You choose your gurus very carefully and you get all the best results. This is something to really think about. If you have questions about that, please ask me.
Venerable, there's a question in chat.
Good.
What happens when a teacher gives up a student? Do they both break vows and incur negative karma?
No, I think that's maybe, so if the teacher comes to the person and says, I do not want to be your teacher anymore. Is that what they're saying? Probably, yeah. Teachers do that. Yeah, that's not necessarily breaking a commitment. Maybe that's wisdom from the teacher's side. That's maybe wisdom from the teacher's side. That's my answer. The student doesn't break anything if the teacher says, I don't want to teach you anymore. Maybe the teacher's having the wisdom to see it's not beneficial. There's no karmic connection there. The student doesn't break anything there, I would suggest. I don't know what else, unless it's very specific, I don't know what else to say about that. If a person wants to talk about that in more detail, you need to email me, I'm sorry. What else, people?
Venerable, can you talk about the central channel in relationship to Tantra?
Well, all the channels. We've got gross body, which is this bag of bones we see here. Then we've got subtle body, which is the subtle nervous system. It's got 72,000 subtle channels going through our entire body. And through those channels is coursing all these different wind energies, all of which are connected to our different mental states. This is the point. These are inextricably linked. So there's the central channel and the thousands of side channels. There's one central channel starting at the top towards the back of the head that ends up at the penis or the cervix for the woman. Then there's 2 side channels here that go up and then run alongside either side of the central channel, ending at the same spot. Then you've got all the other channels, all kind of messy, and they're constricted at different points, which are called chakras. All these constricted channels at the brow, crown, brow, throat, heart, navel, and then 3 down below, internal for the female and external for the male. So the whole idea is we need the mind to go from the gross to the subtle to the very subtle. And that means the wind energies, which the mind is connected to, if they're unable if they're coursing around all these channels, and when we're wide awake and wound up, the winds are berserk going through all these channels, and our states of mind are all over the place. When the winds are uncontrolled, your attachment's uncontrolled, your anger's uncontrolled. That's why we've got to get some concentration. So what we're trying to do is get all the wind energies and the states of mind connected to those winds to go all into the central channel, because when they're all in the central channel, that's what happens when we go to sleep. You become unconscious because the grosser states cease. And the yogis are trying to do that very consciously, to get all the winds to go through from the other side channels to the two side channels into the central channel, and then eventually all the way to the heart chakra. That's when you get to the very subtle mind. That's when you get to the clear light mind. The great yogis practice in their meditations to do that. And that's what happens naturally at death. So when all the winds and all the minds connected to the wind have all absorbed into the central channel, and then from the central channel have gone down to the heart chakra, that's the very subtle mind. And that's the mind, the clear light mind, and that's what we need to access so we can get enlightened. Does that explain?
Yes, thank you.
Good, good, okay. What else, people? What else, sweethearts? Any other questions? I think there's so much to learn. I've only learned a small amount. I'm just learned by listening to other teachings, by having to give these myself, by editing books. But my knowledge is very limited, But if we really want to study all this seriously, in the monasteries, study your 20 years of doing your sutra teachings, and then you go off another years and years doing your tantric teachings, and all the subtleties of all this tantric stuff, which is so complex. But if we can understand the essence of it, which is to help the mind get to the subtlest level, then we make some meaning to it all. But then, of course, we have to learn these technicalities. And then you're able to actually experience these techniques. That's why you've got to have junior school, high school, university, and your vows impeccable, and masses of purification, and masses of merit, and masses of pure devotion. These are the characteristics that enable you to get realizations, These are the ones. So we do our best and to practice. So we've got these come out, like Cameron was saying. We have these commitments. We do the best we can with purest motivation, keep our vows, keep our word of honor as much as we can every day. That keeps us close to the Guru and close to the Buddha. And that means, so in other words, if my mother keeps teaching me how to make cakes, but I can't be bothered, I don't do my homework, I never make any cakes, she's going to give up on me in the end. Of course she would. Why should she keep pushing cakes down my throat when I don't want it? So it's a very dependent arising situation. The lamas are there, the holy beings are there with all their knowledge, dying to give it to us. The onus is on us to want it and to do all the right steps in order to get it, It's a very dependent arising situation. It's a very good relationship to have, I tell you. People, I'm always cheating you of time, I know that. It's only 3 o'clock, but I don't know what else to talk about. So come on, ask me more questions.
Maja has a question, Venerable.
Good, darling. Who is it? I'll look for you. Who is it asking me?
Maja.
Who's asking me?
Maja.
Masha, go talk to me. Talk to me, darling. Go, Masha.
So these wind energies, they're
wind energies. Yeah, go on.
They are personal, but are they also connected from one to the other?
You mean different people?
Yeah.
No, the wind energies are yours completely. No,
yeah,
your wind energies are yours and somebody else's is theirs. But if you are working, if you know how, if we want, as a result of practice, you're able to access your subtler mind, then you can see the minds of others. You can see others because your subtler mind has more powerful capacity for cognition. So the grosser level of consciousness can only see things through the senses and know a little bit about mental things. But as we get more subtle, our subtle mind is capable of seeing things that the grosser mind can't, like the past, the future, and the minds of others. This is what the mind is capable of. But the winds are separate. Your winds are yours and their winds are theirs. Your mind is yours and their mind is theirs. But as you get more subtle, you can see their mind. You know what they're thinking and you know, therefore, how to benefit them. That's what clairvoyance is. Are we communicating, Masha?
Yes, thank you.
Good, sweetheart. What else, people? Lama Yeshe is, Lama Yeshe from the very beginning was so kind, such skill in bringing these ideas to us. because he said that somehow Western people were so deluded, but also so sophisticated in our ability to understand things, that somehow we could understand these principles, these concepts. So reading Lama's teachings is really helpful, I tell you. So one of his books, of course, is Introduction to Tantra, and another one later is called The Bliss of Inner Fire, which is a more sophisticated teaching, but still Lama gave it in such a way, and it's a more technical teaching about these subtle winds and the channels and that kind of thing. So it's a most fascinating book called The Bliss of Inner Fire, published by Wisdom. What else, dearest people?
Please unmute Mirwin.
Okay,
Mary, you have a question, darling?
I do. I have a question about the central channel, or is it called the central nadi? Isn't there
just a channel or nadi? It's fine. Yeah, go on.
Is there a relationship between that and the experience of emptiness, or am I mistaking that? I think I've read that somewhere, like an experience of the void or something that happens.
No, darling. I mean, the point is this. Okay, as I said before, right now, we're living at the grosser level of cognition, mainly through our sensory consciousness. Then we have mental consciousness, and that's all the different mental states that are connected to all these wind energies coursing through these 72,000 subtle channels. All minds are intimately connected to their own set of wind energies, prana. The medical system is based on this, the Tibetan medical system. So the point is, when the winds and therefore the states of mind, when we're wide awake, the winds and the states of mind are going through all the channels all over the body. But as you start to go to sleep, which is what happens when you learn to meditate, but you do it consciously, gradually the winds all come into the central channel. That's why you become unconscious. That's why your senses aren't working. And that's why then you go to your subtle mind and you have dreams. That's your subtle mind, but we don't mostly have control. When all the winds are in the central channel, the grosser states of mind have ceased. So if you're conscious and you're a yogi and you meditate and you're able to go through these stages of death and get to the point where your mind is more subtle, then you are able to meditate on emptiness. It's that level of mind is capable of realizing emptiness. The gross mind is not capable of realizing emptiness because the gross mind is conceptuality. So when your mind is non-conceptual, and if you're conscious, that's the capacity of your subtle mind. So those people, the great yogis, can utilize their dreams to meditate and get realizations. It doesn't happen automatically. You've got to practice it. So if the winds are in your central channel, then your mind is necessarily subtler. And that's what happens as you go through the death process. That's what happens when you go to sleep. Are we communicating, Mary?
Yes, I just wonder if what that experience might feel like. I know that's kind of a silly question, but
it is a silly question. I have to tell you, I agree with you.
Is it? I mean, what
darling, it's like asking what's the experience if you can play Bach. You have to learn to play Bach and find out. I mean, it's hard. I mean, I'll give you the words. But even this is impossible for us. We don't even posit in modern psychology and neuroscience. We do not posit states of mind that are not conceptual or not sensory. So it's just abstract for us. It's just abstract for us, darling. Your mind to be blissful, to be radiant, to be clear. You see the past, you see the future, you see the minds of others. Your mind is vast. All I can do is use those words, which should be tasty enough to make you excited, to want to get it. Isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, right. You have no ego, no fears. If you'd experienced the truth of it, I mean, if you don't just touch it accidentally, lots of people can have very extraordinary experiences, but they haven't realized it properly. They wake up in life and they're ordinary again. You've got to have realized it stably. Then, we're talking. That's what we have to practice.
Ah, yes. Okay. I understand. Thank
you.
Good.
Good. And that's a big problem in the West. We're so addicted to this idea of spiritual.
Oh, wait.
Muted. Venerable Robina, you're muted. I'm so sorry.
Okay. So, we talk a lot in our culture. You're not saying this, Mary, I'm just talking. We talk about spiritual experiences, like little children wanting a quick fix, I mean, so what? You have an experience. It's like it's like you've got some feeling for music and you go to the piano and you suddenly put your fingers on and some very nice sounds come out. And I go, that's beautiful. Why don't you play it again? Oh, no, I can't do that. That was just an experience. That's how we think of spiritual experiences. It's ridiculous. Lots of people can have incredible experiences. Why they all go mad? Because they don't know what to do with it. That's the problem. They don't have the knowledge. It just means you've got a connection. So then you go back to basics. And the number of people who go mad, this is something very interesting, the number of people I've met who go crazy, lose their minds because they have some experience in the meditation, but they have no clue what it's about. It freaks them out and they don't know what to do with it and they don't understand it. That's kind of scary. Who wants that? Not me, thank you. I've not had one damned experience since I've been a Buddhist, and I'm glad. I'm moving slowly, gradually, step by step, to go and have wacky experiences. I mean, you can go crazy, you know. As Lama Yeshe says in one of his books, you end up meditating, you end up in a psychiatric hospital, because the mind is such a powerful thing, carrying the imprints from countless lifetimes. And you can have, due to some past karma, an ability to go to a subtle level momentarily, and you go crazy. I mean, I had some guys in prison who were out of their brains, mad as snakes, as we say in Australia, because they didn't know what to do with the experiences they had, you know, some karma from the past, but no stability. So they don't know what to do with it. You go crazy. People have this weird idea of spiritual experiences in the West, you know. I don't want any of those. I couldn't stand that. One woman, I remember, came to a Tara retreat in Australia years ago, and she'd never meditated before. She got a lot of bliss. She was like a little junkie. She was a little vampire. I mean, it was horrible to see it. Greedy, no idea how to understand it. So if you don't understand the mind, if you haven't studied low rig, if you don't know what attachment is, if you don't know what illusions are, if you don't know how ego functions, if you don't know what bliss means, then you're lost. Just these things happen from past karma, but you lose the plot. It's like a lot of insanity happens. When you know what you're doing, oh my goodness, then it's okay. You've got to learn, study, practice. So one step at a time, people. I'm going to cheat you of time. It's only 3:15, but it's time to go. It's time to finish. I think enough is enough is enough. Unless there's any more questions.
Venerable Robina, Sundrup is here, and Tim and Norberling would like to offer a Thanksgiving mandala.
Okay, that's very kind. We should all do that. That's wonderful. We thank the Buddha for these teachings. Because they're coming out of my mouth, I realize that. But how do I know anything to say if I hadn't heard it from my gurus, if I haven't heard? And this is the real point. I've got Lama Zopa, Lama Yeshe, His Holiness Dalai Lama, all my lamas, all my gurus. I listened a little bit to what they said. Luckily, some benefit has come and some blessings have come. I can speak my mouth. So we thank all those holy gurus for their teachings, and we thank the Buddha from whom they come.
This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Venerable Dundrup. So keep moving, people, keep going, never give up, keep your commitments, keep your vows, be serious. And, you know, I mentioned this business, if you want to be more involved, but I'm saying I'm not going against TNL, but I teach other centers as well. So the little group called Zopa Noble Park, look them up somewhere, you might find them on Facebook, or look on my schedule. I think you'll see it in August. I'm going to be doing this 1,000 Arm Chen Raising Empowerment and the Bodhisattva vows beforehand with a group of people. And I mean, again, think about if Haruka Chakra Sambhara people want, but I'll only do it in relation to a center, and it won't be TNL because it's Geshe-la Center, not mine. I'm only just a visitor. But these things, I find I'm very happy to offer these if centers want them, you know. All right, precious people, thank you so much. Keep moving, keep going, keep going, keep going. Never give up, never give up, never give up. Thank you so much. Jangchub, Semchog, Rinpoche, Make, Panam, Keguchi, Kepa Nyampa, Mepa Yang, Gongne, Gondu, Pobashog, Ngewa Di, Nujodag, Lama Sange, Lama Drowa Chikyang, Malupa, Dei Sala, Gurpa Shog. And may we never develop, even for a moment, wrong views towards the deeds of our most precious gurus. With faith and respect gained from seeing their goodness, may their full inspiration flow into our hearts. Thank you, everybody, so much. Thank you, Venerable Dundrup. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Lou. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, everyone. Much love to everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.